And now I would like to give you all a report from my latest trip down to Byzantium. You know, there are lots of folks who make jokes about how grumpy I am in the morning. The dry mouth, pounding head, and aching muscles. It's all fun and games for them as long as they stay out of axe range. And some smarty pants even tried to tell me and the other fellows that if we didn't drink so much beer and mead the night before, we wouldn't feel so bad in the morning. Now that just didn't make any sense to us. I mean, after all, have a little bit more in the morning and we always feel much better. I mean, just look at old Harold Two Horns before he went to Valhalla. Even for a berserker, he was mean and nasty in the morning. But heck, after 2 or 3 horns of beer or 2 or 3 horns of mead, he was the happiest fella in the village. So I just don't see what drinking has to do with having a bad morning. But you know, the last trip I made down to Byzantium, I discovered a great new thing to drink. The thing was that I was visiting my buddies in the Varangian Guard, and since we hadn't seen each other in quite a while, we had a big party that night. Nothing too fancy, you know. 3 or 4 barrels of mead and beer, a couple dozen friendly ladies, some dancing girls. Things was going pretty good up until some fella started rolling down the halls on top of the empty barrels, and a few of the others started placing bets on which sets of curtains would burn faster than the others. You know, just good, clean fun. I mean, it wasn't like we was burning down the chapel or chasing the nuns anymore. But you know, like I said, them Byzantines, they just got no sense of humor. So they tossed us out of the palace that night, and we had to go find another place to have the party. We found this beer hall down by the docks. In fact, it was close enough that some of the fellas went down to the longboat and had some more dancing races. Now, I myself am not quite that silly. I mean, I was all set to go do some more dancing until old Hack on the Lame got out there and slipped, sat down really hard with his legs on either side of the oar, and I suddenly realized that I would much rather be spending my night having fun with the ladies. So I headed on back to the beer hall. Anyways, in the morning, we was all feeling pretty bad as usual when I smelled this kind of odd, bitter, earthy breeze come in through the front door. And just smelling it seemed to help clear up my head a little bit. So I got up and crawled over to the top of Sven, who looked even greener than usual, and out the front door and saw this other place across the street where folks were sitting around drinking something out of these mugs with steam coming off the top. So I got to my feet and used my axe like a staff and staggered on over there to see what it was. And I got to one of the tables with 2 or 3 fellas sitting at it and leaned over to see what was in the mugs, and boy, they took off like a shot. I mean, you'd think they'd never saw a Viking in the morning walking around with a battle axe before. Or maybe it had something to do with the way that I was groaning and moaning as I leaned over the table. But anyways, I picked up one of the mugs and looked inside, and it was full of something brown that looked like dirty water. But it sure smelled good, so I took a sip, and another, and boy, after a while, my head stopped pounding, and I could see a whole lot better. So I finished off the 3 mugs that fella left behind, and boy, I was feeling really good at that point. So I went inside this place and bought about a dozen pitchers of the stuff, and they called it something like kava or kave or something like that. And I had a couple of the fellows there help me carry it across the street so the rest of the guys could have some. Byzerk liked it so much that he just tossed his mug aside and started drinking it straight out of the pitcher. Halfdan back across the street, bought some more for himself, and Bjorn just started grabbing any mug still sitting on the tables out in front. It wasn't too long before everybody was feeling real good, and things started to get just a little out of control. Byzerk was running up and down the street trying to find someone to play axe catching with, while Bjorn was down at the boat oar dancing all by himself, running up one set of oars and jumping right over the boat onto the other set of oars without even touching the deck. Hakon had his axe in his mouth, chewing the haft all to splinters without even being berserk, while Halfdan was practically grinding his broadsword down to a dagger with a whetstone. I didn't know what the heck was going on, but we sure had to do something fast, so me and Sven piled everybody into the longboat, and we'd figured we'd have them row around the bay for a bit. And just when Wiglaf had picked up the drum in the back of the boat near the steering oar, the fellas just grabbed a hold of them oars, and boy, we took off like a shot. I ain't never seen a longboat take off so fast. And Wiglaf went right over the back of the boat and into the water. Now, the thing was that as he went over the back of the boat, a rope had gotten wrapped around his ankle, and when he hit the water, he sat down right on top of his drum, and his butt went right through the top, and he got stuck. And we was going so fast that we just pulled him along behind us, skipping right along top of the water there. Actually, it looked like a lot of fun. Anyways, this went on for a good hour or more until the fellas finally started to get tired, and we pulled old Wiglaf back up into the boat. Now, I gotta tell you, I really like that kava stuff we found down there in Byzantium, but you better be careful with it around the Berzerks or you could end up in a whole lot of trouble. Yeah, sure, you betcha.